And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. We have typical Wednesday fare lined up for you, although it promises to be an atypical conversation. The weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will be joining us a little bit later on. You will be joining us at the bottom of the hour and taking over the show with Buy, Sell, or Hold, one of our more popular segments each and every week, so we're looking forward to that. But before we get to those typical Wednesday festivities, let us begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Terrible People, Terrible Things. According to Catherine Herridge at CBS News, the Iran documents Donald Trump was talking about with staffers in that 2021 recording released by CNN this week that you heard on the show yesterday. Those Iran documents are not central to the case against Trump in federal court. So what was the point of that recording after all? Just a 24-hour news cycle. Donald Trump, your thoughts?
You're not concerned then with your own voice on those recordings?
My voice was fine. What did I say wrong on those recordings? I didn't even see the recording. All I know is I did nothing wrong. We had a lot of papers stacked up. In fact, you could hear the rustle of the paper, and nobody said I did anything wrong, other than the fake news, which, of course, is Fox, too.
Are there any other recordings that we should be concerned of?
I don't know of any recordings that you should be concerned with, because I don't do things wrong. I do things right. I'm a legitimate person.
The online GOP primary hit a new low yesterday after a Trump media acolyte at Breitbart News decided to publish personal text messages he obtained of Pedro Gonzalez, a fierce proponent of Governor Ron DeSantis. Gonzalez says his texts came from a quote-unquote dumb time in his life. Leaking and then publishing the personal communications of the fans of a rival political candidate is something that communists do, but apparently Team Trump isn't beyond that, as even Donald Trump Jr. shared this story. Ron DeSantis was in New Hampshire yesterday, and he hit Trump on his failure to drain the swamp.
So the question is, and I remember these rallies in 2016. It was exciting. Drain the swamp. I also remember lock her up, right? And then 2 weeks after the election, don't forget about it. Forget I ever said that. No. One thing you'll get from me, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm not just saying that for an election. And there are promises I could make that may help me marginally politically that I don't know that I could necessarily follow through on, so I will not make that. And I think the idea of draining the swamp, in some respects, I think it misses it a little bit. Because we didn't drain it. It's worse today than it's ever been, by far. And that's a sad testament to the state affairs of our country. But even if you're successful at draining it, the next guy can just refill it. So I want to break the swamp. That's really what we need to do.
You know, he's promising a lot. I was just down the border, huge policy. He's running on 24, the same thing he ran on in 2016 and didn't bring to fruition. He said he was going to drain the swamp in 2016. We ended up with Anthony Fauci running the country. He didn't drain the swamp.
Checking in on Joe Biden, who shared his thoughts about Vladimir Putin.
It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's losing the war at home.
Yes, Vladimir Putin is losing the war in Iraq. Speaking of Biden, another IRS whistleblower has come forward anonymously and has all but corroborated the previous IRS whistleblower's claims that the agency treated Hunter Biden's tax issues with kitty gloves. And now for something completely different and in the category of progressivism is cancer. This is police body cam footage from last year from an unidentified location that surfaced online this week. The story goes that a man called the police after another man was making threats in a park against him and his family.
I'll be with you just 1 second.
Are you arrested?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see what's wrong.
But still, I will need for you to fill out a statement for him.
I don't want him arrested. I just want him to leave us alone.
No, but he had a weapon on him, and it was terrorist threats.
Brandishing is not a crime with a knife. Brandishing is only a crime for a gun.
Terroristic threats, though, sir.
Because he said die to me and had his knife out?
All that was done. The threats, everything. Let me get a statement.
If I thought you were going to arrest him, I wouldn't call. I just wanted to leave us alone.
I understand, but we still have a job to do.
Now he's gonna think I'm doing this because I'm white and he's black, or he's homeless and I'm not. I don't want
But did he do what he did?
Yeah, but I don't
don't want him thinking I did it because he's in whatever situation he's in. I just want him to leave us alone.
I doubt that.
Okay, man.
I'll be right back, okay?
In New York City, the Department of Environmental Protection has drafted new rules that would order eateries using wood and coal-burning pizza ovens to slice carbon emissions by up to 75% in the coming years. In response and in protest, this man showed up to City Hall and littered the entrance with pizza.
Give us pizza or give us death. Destroying every small business. That's what this city keeps doing. Can't have a small business. Can't have pizza. New York City is nothing without pizza.
And finally, this.
Yes, you'll occasionally see an adult human exposing themselves to a child at our pride parades. And yes, we do have armed robberies and murders and an increase in homelessness and an increase in illegal immigration. And there's trash all over our streets. And you might get shanked on the subway. But if you want to go to the heart of these issues, if you want to go to the root of these problems, it's the coal ovens at pizzerias.
And that's what happened while we were away.
That guy's crying. That is one of the most pathetic things I have seen in my entire life. That's real?
Yeah.
So he was about to be assaulted, called the police.
Yes.
And then is upset that they're arresting him and he's crying?
Yes.
Progressivism is
cancer. Told you.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends at Bonner Private Wines. These red wines, unlike any you've ever tasted before. Little notes of blackberry, leather smoke, dark cherry. They are absolutely delicious. All three of us have tried them. Todd has tried them repeatedly and would highly recommend that you do the same responsibly, of course. From Malbec grapes grown deep within the Andes Mountains at 9,000 feet of altitude, families that are going on. I don't even know now. One guy keeps emailing me over and over again about whether I am getting the century count right. Imagine you have no other time during your day but to send me a note about this. Are they going on a third century, going on a second century? And he's like incensed. And I can't even remember what answer he wants me to give. So I'm just going to say they're going on a 5th century. Hell, I don't know what century they've been doing it. Just for a long ass time. I don't know. Okay? Seriously, there's a guy that emails me every time about this. Right? I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. All right. 50% off the wine. You can't beat it. Plus free shipping, which is a big deal when we're talking about imported wines. And you can get a bonus bottle of small batch limited production wine from their exclusive wine cellar as well to make it 4 bottles for the price of 3, half off and free shipping when you go to BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve, BONNER for BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve. All right, let's dig into what's inside of Aaron's montage. Todd. I know you're a good Catholic boy. Did you go to Catholic school as a kid?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. So then you never experienced the rap across the knuckles phenomenon.
No.
Is that a stereotype? Is that a legend? Is it real?
My father tells me it happened to him.
Okay. I'm resetting this for a reason. All right. You know, earlier this year, we had a noose sitting there. We may be the only show ever to have a noose on set live. Lots of people ask questions about it. People that came into the studio. Why is there a noose thing?
Why not?
Why not, we say?
To be fair, we may be the only show who, could have a lot of different endings. It doesn't always have to end with a noose.
Yeah, ask not.
Yes.
Whether the noose is for you. Whatever. Okay. All right. So here's why I bring this up. All right. Here's why I bring this up. I was getting JFK and Ernest Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and everything else all mixed up. I just had to tap out. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message. All right. And
Are you in Iraq right now?
Get Putin out of Iraq, and they don't have maps. All right. I want you to have a ruler on set. Okay?
Okay.
I want you. Okay? One that would stretch this far.
So yardstick territory.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I know where this is
If
going.
I attempt at any point ever again, and I mean ever again, I know I have vowed this before. I know I have before. I know I have. And every time I think I'm out, I get pulled back in. I know I have done this before. And I have a problem. I can't stop analyzing.
Is this the issue I had to defend you on Twitter last night about?
Is it? I don't know. Just if at any point again I attempt to provide any form of legitimate analysis of any of these Trump court cases
it's not that.
And any of their filings, okay, and any of them whatsoever, anything that like we didn't see someone get up and say live themselves on camera in a courtroom or afterwards, you know what I'm saying? Anything that there's not like raw video that in real time we could see. So therefore we know what its true origin is and whether this person even exists. All right? Anything short of that, if I attempt ever again to provide any form of analysis, as I begin to do it, I ask that you grab the ruler so I see it in the corner of my eyes, and that's a warning. That's a warning. If I don't immediately cease and desist I want us to mark the tape, okay? June 28th, 2023, you have my consent and expressed spoken permission. If once you grab that ruler, I don't immediately cease and desist attempting to put any form of logic or analysis into this, you will then immediately grab said ruler and rake me across the knuckles with it as hard as you can.
Point of order.
Okay?
Point of order. What if we got a Nerf gun? I don't think a yardstick is going to reach that far. I've been thinking about this as you've been talking about it.
I'll make it work.
Something that will hurt. Something that will sting. Something that will stop me from doing this to myself again.
Airsoft gun.
Okay.
There we go.
You realize
because if you're following, in the indictment, they mention that he's on tape saying that he here pronouns Trump. In the indictment, they mention that Trump incriminated himself on tape. Said tapes of the same conversation that's in the indictment leaks on one network. Another network the next day quotes sources saying it's not actually in material evidence in the case. I'm out. I don't know what I don't know what that is. I have to stop.
Realize how hard this is going to be for
I know.
you.
To give me some credit, I stopped myself this morning. I initially tweeted out some response to that Catherine Herridge report, some analysis. It was 3 points. And then it was like the Holy Spirit stepped in and racked me across the brain and said, what you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing here? Stop it. Just stop. You have a problem. Stop. Do you even Romans? It's like the Spirit said, do you even Romans 1, bro? Stop this. Okay? It's just random. Nothing's happening of any substance, nothing good. Stop it. Let it go, man. And so I did. I finally listened. I went in there, edited the tweet, and I just went back to my terrible people doing terrible things to other terrible people terribly and just moved on. So in the future, if I attempt ever again to analyze this in any way, shape, or form beyond something we did not witness happen live in real time with our own eyes and our own ears, I am asking you in very brutal fashion to hold me accountable, please.
It's an honor and a privilege.
I need you. I mean, I need it. You're my accountability partner right now. I need you to stop me from doing this to myself.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious. I don't want to. We're not breaking them down. I don't care.
So if I got an airsoft gun and gave it to Todd, you would...
If I start doing what I did on the show yesterday, point it at me. If I don't immediately stop, fire. Okay? Fire right away. I need to stop this. All right? I need to stop this.
I like this shit.
I have a problem.
It's exciting.
Okay? I'm apparently the only one taking any of this seriously. Yeah. No one else is. And so I just need to pick up the cue. And so I am just not comfortable saying that Trump is forever right about everything, because he's not. And so therefore, that seems to be the only serious analysis that is serious. Everything else is a joke. And so I've got to move on. I have to stop this. I have to recognize I have a problem. That's the first step, right? Recognize you have a problem. And I have to, no, this is me. I'm repenting. I'm turning away. I am turning away. All right. If the dog returns to its own vomit, then you need to rub the dog's nose in it so he stops doing that. Okay? I need you to do this for me.
So we will march forward.
Thank you. I want to discuss the Pedro Gonzalez story. And one thing I have found over the last several months on our show, despite the growth of traffic on Twitter since Elon took over, is very few of you that follow us every day on this show are on Twitter. And I mean, I just see it. I just, the level of volume, and it's different people that are, that listen to the show compared to on Twitter. And our listener numbers are very good. The level and volume of instantaneous pushback I get with any form of Trump criticism on Twitter is completely different than what is in my inbox. And this morning I said something on Twitter that I have said on the show several times. And I said it on Twitter for the first time this morning. And this Pedro Gonzalez story proves it. I think this is a very important story for our industry and our movement. And I know at times I am not pleased with what I see from our industry and our movement. This morning I am. I am very pleased with what I see. Because I see other people that see the precedent that this is set that we cannot allow. So I have never met Pedro Gonzalez. I first interacted with him a few months ago. We had him on the show for the first time. Is that the only time he's been on?
No, he's been on several times.
He's been on two times. He's been on twice then, okay. I've long admired his work. I found out about him, long admired like over the last couple of years. Found out about him from his appearances with Tucker Carlson. That's how I found out who Pedro Gonzalez was.
Just to protect you, I'm pretty sure he's been on more than twice. He hasn't been on a handful. I think he's been on 3 times.
Okay.
One of them was a bit more of a stretch back, but I do believe so. Just to protect you, because I'm the one who books him. I'm pretty sure I booked him more than 2. But it's been 2 very recently.
Okay. I don't know a lot about what he was into prior to the time that he was with I saw him with Tucker and American Greatness. And I didn't even read the Breitbart article. I didn't even read it. Here's why. Because even though I've had very limited direct interactions with Pedro, I think we have texted twice and spoken mostly via DM, other than the few times he's been on the show. That's it. I've never met him personally, don't know him at all. He came to me over a week ago to give me a heads up that this kind of a story was coming out. He came to me over, and in that conversation, he said that they're gonna come after him with things he said that he's ashamed of, that he's not happy with. He's a different person now. And I think, frankly, if you just looked at the way, the tone of I would hate the word tone, the temperament in which he has interacted on social media, just his conversation, the stuff he posted about his son and things of that nature. This is a different guy than you would have seen on social media if you go back to 2019, 2018, etc. He brought this to my attention. Didn't have to do that. Gave me a heads up that this was coming. Did not have to do that. I mean, we're not like, personal friends. I don't have like some top 10 show that wields like an enormous, and it's some form of like, I don't have a Beck Levin, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Dan Bongino audience where I can almost comment as somebody if I wanted to. He did not have to do that. This was just out of respect, mutual respect. Came to me yesterday to tell me that the story was coming later that evening. And you can tell when someone's turn is real by the way they behave in light of it and after the fact. And that's different from, say, a jailhouse confession. Okay, now this stuff is out in the open and I'm sickened by it. Now that people have me. And it's very clear that Pedro Gonzalez believes he got involved in a faction of MAGA world that put him in into a dark place. And If anything, he's gone so far the other way to break away from that at times, frankly, I find myself thinking, I think that's probably an unfair criticism of Trump, actually, But I think, though, that is a demonstration of the sincerity of his concern about the world he was contemplating getting into and the things he was thinking of embracing. Here's the thing, though. Nobody in Trump world cared about any of Pedro Gonzalez's problematic views and words until he stopped slurping Donald Trump, and then they did suddenly care. That is a precedent that cannot be allowed to be established. That's how the left operates. That is a level of identity politic we can't have. That's a cult, folks. That's what that is. That's not any different than Jason Whitlock, Delano Squires, Thomas Sowell, Clarence Thomas. They're not black anymore because they're not Democrats. Dave Rubin, not gay anymore because he's not a Democrat. We sit here and mock and pan that stuff. We point out that identity politic cult all the time. We cannot. And I have seen, I've seen our good friend Matthew Peterson and others. Mm-hmm. Whoever's a part of this is professionally dead to me. Lots of people recognize that this is a precedent we cannot set. If you are uncomfortable, if you believe Pedro Gonzalez's past viewpoints are problematic and have no place on the right, then you should address them just for that reason. But these messages are from a while ago. That's not what this is about. This is about the fact that he's being very critical of Trump. We can't have that. And this is final proof of something I have said on the show a few times in the last few months. That you can always tell when Trump steps on a rake and or his acolytes have gone too far. Because what you'll see is you'll see a divide within MAGA world. You will see the nutter group, the cult group, the grift group. They will just pile on the rake, impale themselves upon it. They love rakes. They can't get enough. These are the best rakes. We only step on the best rakes. We only hire the best rakers, right? And they'll just continue on. And so that's whoever that clown was at Breitbart. That's who that is. And I have no idea what audience Breitbart has. They gave us a glowing coverage of Nefarious. I can't tell you it sold us one damn ticket. So I don't have a clue what their audience is. I know they have a legendary comments section. I can't tell you the last time anybody walked up to me in an Iowa caucus and said, I was reading Breitbart the other day, and I don't know when that happened. I'm sure it has happened at some point in my career. It just hasn't been any time very recently. It hasn't been very often. But that cannot happen. I don't care if it's Trump. I don't care if it's DeSantis. I don't care if it's your mom. It cannot happen that the plumb line for fealty to our industry and movement is what you think about one particular person. That can't happen. That's an identity politic cult. That is exactly what we're up against, and that's what they tried to install via Pedro Gonzalez. That has to not just be a no, but a you-know-what no. Nope, not doing that. I am pleased to see the amount of my colleagues this morning. In fact, I wasn't even going to comment on this. I mean, I didn't think it was that big of a story. Pedro came and addressed it with me personally. I didn't really think most of my audience probably wouldn't even know or care. And last night I saw a lot of our colleagues around the industry jumping on this, saying, going the full Gandalf. This will not pass. We're not doing this. Not setting this example. Don't.
And you won't be surprised by this, but to help your argument, Steve, two of the people that raced to condemn Pedro were David French and Jonah Goldberg. So.
Correct. By the way, credit to Matt Gaetz for calling this out. See, because then you get to the other MAGA group. The other MAGA group, there are people that just that are serious about, on some level, serious about their beliefs, on some level, because I don't know all these people, I can't tell you what level, but serious about saving the country on some level. And you can always tell when Trump because right now at Mar-a-Lago, Trump is surrounded by two kinds of people, Lindsey Graham and Laura Loomer. Those are and I have no idea how you put those two people in a room. Donald Trump has managed to do it. That's essentially his inner sanctum at Mar-a-Lago right now. Lindsey Graham and Laura Loomer. Neither one of those people is serious. Neither one of them. Neither one of them are serious. Neither one of them are sincere. And so there are a lot of very sincere people in MAGA world that for whatever reason just like Donald Trump maybe more than I do, but are very serious as I am about trying to save this country. And you will see that when a moment like what happened last night with Pedro Gonzalez, they will either go quiet and silent. Like you saw a lot of them go silent after the Brett Baier interview last week. Just didn't even happen. Just pivoted right to something else with Biden, okay? Or you will see them rebuke it. And you saw Matt Gaetz do that last night. Say, hey, I love Donald Trump. Don't agree with Pedro, but we're not doing this. This is not right. We're not setting this precedent. This is Donald Trump's last ride, although he seems to be running for president as if he was never president before and appears to be getting away with it. He was. And win or lose this election, he doesn't have another one in him. This is his last ride. We cannot allow, no matter how powerful his persona, no matter how significant his achievements, and there are significant achievements. We just commemorated the 1-year anniversary of perhaps his most significant over the weekend, correct?
Yes.
But no matter what those things happen to be, we cannot allow such a damaging and corrupting precedent to be set on the basis of him that will long outlive him and absolutely turn us against each other at a molecular level and make us even far more ineffective than we already are. We are never going to beat an identity politic cult with an identity politic cult. That cannot be permitted to be established. That precedent, man, has to be snuffed. Snuffed right away. Can't happen. Otherwise, we're not a movement. We're just a cult. We are the very grifters we are, except it's not just a few notorious people. That's basically what we are on a systemic level. That cannot happen. And I am very pleased, and that's the only reason I'm talking about it this morning, as I saw a lot of my colleagues step up last night when I was just going to say, I don't think it's a big deal, move on. But a lot of my colleagues were like, no, this is a big deal and cannot happen. And you know what? They're right. It can't. And that's why I wanted to address it this morning. There has to be a better standard than will you pet my politician the way I will? Will you love my monkey? Will you polish the same idol? I will. If not, then we're done here. Let's get thee to a nunnery. Let's just go ahead, change formats. Let's go from biblical worldview to a straight up Christian ministry show. I'm okay with that if we have to, by the way. But then we're just done here culturally because there's no hope in that. The market's already cornered on identity politic cults. We're never going to be better at that than them. That's their brand. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Well, it's one thing to say it on Twitter, but I think the comparison of Donald Trump's Mayor Quimby routine right there on the one hand and Grandpa Simpson, Joe Biden on the other, and then you have the stark contrast of Ron DeSantis and the moment he had there, the two moments, just the clarity. I think this is just the beginning of what we're going to see. And if it's coming from Breitbart, what is the legacy of Andrew Breitbart that continues to survive in meme form is him staring in and saying war. You remember that, Steve, right?
Well, last night, Breitbart stared onto the keyboard screen and after they hit publish, screamed, cult.
Yeah. See,
I screamed that instead.
That's the point I was just trying to make. So I'm concerned.
Aaron, you have thoughts on this when we come back?
Sure, yeah.
All right, because I want to hear them. Especially given that you represent a new generation. We'll do that, and then we'll get to buy, sell, or hold in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show. Don't forget about our friends over at My Patriot Supply. If you watched Dementia Joe say on Aaron's montage a little while ago that Putin needs to get out of Iraq, and you're thinking, yeah, we might be in trouble here. You're right. So make sure you are prepared just in case, and get the new lower-priced, popular 4-week emergency food kit from my Patriot Supply. Limited time offer with the new price. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks, the full complement of the 2,000 plus calories that you and whomever else you get a kit for in your home needs to get by each and every day. And these stay good for well over 20 years with proper storage. Take advantage of this offer right now when you go to preparewithdace.com. That's preparewithdace.com, discreetly delivered, so no one has to know you're a prepper. Okay? But again, proper storage. These things are good for well over 20 years at preparewithdace.com. All right, Aaron, your thoughts on what we were just discussing with the dangerous precedent that Breitbart and the nutter segment of MAGA World tried to set a dangerous precedent, in my view, last night.
Yeah, if this becomes mainstreamed on the right, that's going to be my tap out on anything political. There's really no vehicle at that point if it's just two identity politic cults going at it. I don't know. I'm not speaking for the show. I'm not speaking for you guys. But if that becomes the mainstream right, that we're just going to do the same identity politic that the left does, that's just tap out. That's tap out. And especially these tactics where, hey, you're never safe. If you're in the good, what were you just talking about? I believe maybe it was one of the evergreen shows that we taped over the weekend. But this devotion and fealty that you have to pledge to the cult on the left.
Yeah.
It's something new every single week.
Yep.
Every single month.
The Ukraine flag, the mask,
Ukraine flag.
my
if that starts happening on the right, it's not really the right anymore.
No, it's not.
So that's going to be a tap out for me if that ever happens. And that could happen in 6 months. It could happen in 6 years. Whenever that happens, that really means that politics, at least at the national level, are no longer a vehicle that can be used.
It's not just starting, though. This is what's behind that poll, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the 25% on both sides who won't vote for the other side. It's not just starting. This just
You mean on the Trump side you're talking about, just to clarify sides.
Yes.
25% said they would only consider him as a nominee. 28% said they would only consider him as a nominee. 24% said that they would never consider him as a nominee. Yeah. This is again a quantification of what I have been warning about. That you can see the signs. We are descending into dueling, D-U-E-L, dueling Roman cults. All right. On the left, we have what our colleague Oran McIntyre describes as the total state. For the glory of the state is in whom I live and breathe. The state is God. Okay. But now there is a rising tide on the right that wants a Caesarian cult. Give us a king. And that's not the stuff of a republic. And you give Caesar, you give Julius the keys to the city. He does end up eventually getting rid of the bad guys. Guess what though? He never gives the keys to the city back. And actually that sets the stage for the total state, because the republic is down dead. And ultimately, whenever it becomes a battle between which side is the most zealous about consolidating power within its ranks, they're always going to win that, because that's pagan. That's not the stuff of the American Revolution. That is outside of a Judeo-Christian worldview. They're always going to be more radicalized. They're always going to be more zealous. They're always going to be willing to go to places that we are not willing to go to. That's because they're untethered from anything godly. We're not going to beat that with another form of godlessness. We just can't possibly be as good at it as they are.
And the irony of all this is look at how you're trying to hang and why you're trying to hang Pedro for past mistakes. This cult looks past every single past, present, and future mistake of Donald Trump. Look at that video right now. Look at the multiple videos right now. We're just at base in comics. How about you start with expecting more of Dear Leader?
How many stories I don't know. Maybe they have. I don't know. I'm just curious. Has Breitbart asked Donald Trump as many questions about what the hell he started doing to this country on March 16, 2020, as they have vetted Pedro Gonzalez's past text message and communications?
The point.
That's the stuff of a cult. I don't care what you think of Pedro Gonzalez. I barely know him. What I've seen, I think he's very smart, very respectable. The stuff that's in that story, I've never seen any of that stuff. And he says it's in the past, and from what I've seen of him now, the interactions I've had with him haven't resembled anything close to that kind of a person, and I don't associate with people that communicate that way. I hate it. But I also know, even if he's a complete and total fraud, and he absolutely believes everything that's in those sordid communications, it didn't do a scintilla of the damage that Operation Warp Speed did. It didn't do a scintilla of the damage that lockdowns did. And if we're at the point now that the politicians don't have a standard and everybody else has to be held to one, that's not a republic. That's not a movement. That is a cult. That's give us a king so we can be like everybody else. And it reminds me of the dinner I had about a month ago in Boise with Peter McCullough. And several things, it was very brutally honest. So several of those things I'll keep to myself. But one thing I will share that I think Peter would be okay with me sharing with you is traveling this country. What blew him away is how many people really just want a king. Really just want a king. Don't want freedom. Don't want to make their own decisions. Just want to be led. Just want a king. Let's get to buy, sell, or hold. Each week at this time, you get to take over the show with your submissions via Twitter to Aaron. No topic is off limits. You hopefully they're not terrible, too terribly offensive anyway. Todd, you and I will decide: are we going to buy it? Are we going to sell it? If, however, at any point in time you use a hold, you have punked out, you have failed the dude code, and you must make restitution to Lindsey Graham in arrears.
No.
Speaking of Lindsey Graham, there is a top 10 list of his least favorite songs coming up a little bit later, just to tease that.
That's a tease.
I think it's, that's coming up a little bit later, and I think it's just as funny and effective as the other Lindsey Graham lists we've had. But first, we will begin with Sean Griffith's Mount Rushmore of epitaphs for the gravestone of conservatism. We can't stoop to their level. We need to fight fairly. I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal. That could never happen here. 15 days to slow the spread. Okay, 30 more days.
Yeah, I mean, that list could go on and on, but that's a fantastic start. There was a guy who responded to something I tweeted this morning, and I can't remember exactly. I did retweet him, but he nailed this sentiment. He said, I am guilty. I know that I was constantly saying that conservatism, the complaint against conservative not pushing back hard enough is that we were civil. He said I was basically making a tone argument, and now I totally understand that we were never civil. It was always cowardice of a sort all along. And so the fact that people are waking up to that as well is very, very important. Conservatism has been about, whatever it was, has been about excuse making for a very, very long time. And I don't think the ideals of conservative are exactly what Steve always says, but as a brand, I can't wait to move on from that word, because it actually is an anchor around our neck.
I just don't. What's the next word?
I don't know. I don't have one, which is why I don't. But this is. It doesn't. It's an eye roll. It's a side eye right now. What does it get? What does it instill in people? Where it's at. I mean, names nefarious. Names have power.
I will buy. Now, I do think there are limits to. We can't stoop to their level, because I'm a Christian. I cannot bear false witness.
We were just talking about this.
So I think it's a good time to clarify it. just to make sure I'm not being inconsistent.
Sure.
I cannot violate God's law to defeat my enemy, because I cannot do evil so that good may come. The Bible is very clear on that.
Yes.
But I can do everything short of that. And so if you mean that, then I agree. I assume Sean means that in the Jonah Goldberg, David French context.
Yeah.
Then I wholeheartedly agree. Yes. But by the way, that actually explains why we can't ever be as good at zealotry and cults as them. Because that will actually unravel us. 0 times 0 is 0. That won't preserve anything. That's the premise that they're actually arguing. The premise that they're arguing is there is no standard other than the one that I want. Standards are subjective. Okay? So, I mean, I don't care if we have subjective standards from the right or left. That is, there have been historically plenty of subjective standards from the right that have done a lot of damage, just as much damage to the Christian church as subjective standards from the left. I'm not interested in your subjective standards in any packaging. No, thank you.
Next up, we go to Some Call Me Tim. Wilson Contreras is getting what he deserves by leaving the Cubs for the Cardinals.
What?
Is he hurt or something?
I love the awkward segue here.
I have no idea.
From the rules of engagement
to the Cubs and Cardinals.
To the Cubs and the Cardinals. The randomness of this. I will just buy on just the sheer meaninglessness of this proposition. Yes, I will buy on those.
Well?
I'm not even sure I even could pick Wilson Contreras out of a police lineup.
I will also sell on the meaningless of the proposition because I have no idea what's going on in professional baseball.
Okay, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Tim. Tiny Johnny says, Genesis versus Phil Collins. How about this for another segue?
Okay.
This is
5 songs.
Now, this is a far more meaningful battle in my opinion.
5 songs to help decide which is better.
All right.
Number 5, In Too Deep versus Against All Odds. Number 4, Land of Confusion versus Easy Lover. Number 3, Follow You, Follow Me versus Groovy Kinda Love. Number 2, That's All versus In the Air Tonight. And number 1, Invisible Touch versus Susudio.
See, I don't think that solves anything.
No.
Okay? First of all, put that back up there, Aaron, okay, so I can see it. Against All Odds is way better than In Too Deep.
I love both.
Easy Lover is okay. Land of Confusion is one of the best songs of that decade, in my view. Certainly among the best music videos of that decade. Groovy Kinda Love is way better than Follow You, Follow Me. That was also a number 1 song, Groovy Kinda Love was. In the Air Tonight is
magnum opus.
Yes, I mean that's better than That's All.
That's All is fantastic.
Yeah, but it's not In the Air Tonight. And Invisible Touch is great. So Studio is pure 80s as it gets. I mean, I don't think that solves anything. I think all you did was just point out that Genesis and Phil Collins were both really good.
Love both.
that Phil Collins is a maestro that lifted Genesis out of relative obscurity in the Peter Gabriel days.
Tiny
and
Johnny.
to stardom, and then became his own star on top of that.
Tiny Johnny, don't Pedro Gonzalez this thing. We must come together.
Indeed, all while looking like Stapler Guy's dad. Okay? That's tough to do. I mean, he pulled that off while looking like Stapler Guy's dad. I mean, if we were doing tryouts for lead singer, just on the sheer look, of lead guy.
Not only
Phil Collins probably is not getting picked very often, and he played the drums. Is that what you're going to say?
No, but that's
because him and Don Henley are like the only ones, right?
Yeah, but that's in a vacuum. And oh, by the way, he had to step in and replace frontman Peter Gabriel, which is no small task.
Yeah, I don't think you solved anything. I think actually you maybe started more of a conversation than ended it. Yeah.
They're both great. They're both fantastic.
We go now to Austin. Blocking Merrick Garland from getting a seat on the Supreme Court is the single greatest thing Mitch McConnell has ever done.
I will buy that. I'll buy that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think his motivations for that were nothing other than recognition that if they allowed Barack Obama to replace Antonin Scalia, the entire scam of the Republican Party would get blown up. And so he had, because at any guys, he's been in the Senate. He's been in Washington longer than you've been alive, Aaron.
Yeah.
And you're 30 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
So what other issue other than that particular one has Mitch McConnell ever demonstrated any of the same kind of tenacity from our perspective on? I'll answer for you.
Defeating conservatives.
None. Well, from our perspective, yeah. I mean, this is the only time that tenacity was generated in our in our direction. In his entire career. Why? because allowing Obama to appoint Antonin Scalia out in the open would have so blown up the entire scam of the Republican Party. Because what is the final and usually only reason most of our people still vote Republican? Judges. Because we're all judicial supremacists now. So he had to do it. That was notwithstanding, whatever his motivations were, and I'm pretty sure they weren't altruistic. I'm confident. In fact, I'll bet on it. A lot, even. Nevertheless, he did still do the deed and deserves credit for that. And so I agree. Bye.
All right. Next up, we go to Jamie Burwell. Top 10 summer blockbusters. I think she means of all time.
Of all time.
In no particular order. There's one on here that stands out. I don't really think constitutes a blockbuster. I'll see if you guys agree. We go and start with Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan.
Well, now you're just kissing up. This is a clear attempt. To kiss up to the host, and he will, of course, accept the fealty. So I will thank you for the gracious offering and buy. Yes.
Gladiator.
Well, that's one of my top 10 all-time favorite movies.
Sorry,
now we are really maybe even being obnoxiously sycophantic to the host of this show, with those being your first two.
Todd, you buying those first two?
Just let Steve do this.
Okay. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
This is key because most of the Harry Potter movies, as Aaron well knows, almost all of them came out in November. This was the one that came out in the summertime, correct?
Yes. Yep. I think in May.
Yep. So that's the summer movie season. Yep. Anything after May 1 is considered summer movie season, so I will buy. Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back.
Now, see? Now I have to ask what Jamie wants from me. Okay? I mean, there must be a request after this, okay? Because for 20 years I thought this was my all-time favorite film until Return of the King was made. So I will buy. Yes.
The Sandlot.
Great movie, not a blockbuster though. Yeah. So I got to sell.
Dunkirk.
Okay movie. It's okay.
I don't even know what we're doing.
I mean, it's a summer movie. It was a blockbuster, but it would
kind of random.
I don't think it's top 10 also.
Top Gun.
Absolutely. Belongs on the list, I think.
National Lampoon's Vacation.
Sam, I like Christmas Vacation more, so I'm going to sell.
The Dark Knight.
Absolutely.
And Jaws.
That's the original OG summer blockbuster, the first ever. That's a pretty good list overall. So I'll buy. I think I'd have a better one, but that's a pretty good one. I'll buy. Todd, your thoughts?
Selling. Just on Dunkirk alone.
On Dunkirk alone. All right. We'll come back with hour 2 in a moment. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here alongside Todd Erz and Aaron McIntyre. And all of you, and you can all, just hopefully not all at once, let us know what you think about what we think by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and where else? Oh, yeah, at Real Steve Deace on Truth Social. At Real Steve Deace on Truth Social as well. If you are a podcast listener, thank you so much for being one of many of those. Please hit the 5-star review if you like the show. If you've not yet done that, also click like, subscribe, or follow if you're on iTunes. And thank you to all of you that have done those things for us already. Each and every one of them count, and we appreciate, therefore, each and every one of you that have done that. This portion of the show brought to you by our friends over at Freedom Project Academy. If you're not looking for alternatives to government school indoctrination, why? Now, we are at the end of our homeschooling journey. Both our daughters, Anastasia and Zoe, were homeschooled all the way through. Zoe just graduated about a month ago. Our son Noah was homeschooled until middle school, and then he's been at Des Moines Christian ever since. So we're at the end of our homeschooling journey. Absolutely loved it. It was very challenging. Understand, it's not the easiest and simplest thing to do and to take on. And so you may be thinking, what is a way that I can maybe get the best of both worlds? That we still are developing, our family structure and culture at home, like you can do uniquely with homeschooling. But then I can get my kids a first-class education at the same exact time. Look no further than our friends at Freedom Project Academy. My son Noah was enrolled in this for a couple of the years that he was being homeschooled, so I saw up close and personal how good they are. And I know the guys like Dr. Duke Pesta that helped to establish FPA. We fought together against Common Core back in the day. Classical learning based on Judeo-Christian values. What's classical learning mean? It means they teach you how to think, not what to think. This is about critical thinking. And they teach them subject matter that actually matters. They don't teach them how to be subjected. That's what's going on in the government schools now. You can save 10% on your tuition when you enroll today at freedomforschool.com, F-O-R, freedomforschool.com. Or just go there to get a free information pack if you'd rather do that. At freedomforschool.com. Again, that's freedomforschool.com. At the bottom of the hour, Daniel Horowitz will be joining us, and I know he's got a lot to say about the Pedro Gonzalez matter and the precedent that was attempted to be set last night. And so we will discuss that with him coming up when the prophet of woe and lamentation joins us then. But until then, gentlemen, let us continue on with buy, sell, or hold. Aaron, you're up.
A lot of moving parts on this one, but I selected it because I thought it was interesting. Tony Robeson says Russia transferred nukes to Belarus in May. Then a rogue general is transferred there in June to allow Putin to have plausible deniability on use of said nukes.
Good friend of mine had this exact theory when we were texting about this a couple days ago. Exact theory. And I think it's an option. And it kind of goes with one of the guesses that I gave on Monday. Was this an attempt by Putin to say, see, I'm under all this pressure. I had no choice but to up the ante here, ratchet it up a little bit and wrap things up here. And, let's get this Ukraine operation done and over with and move on for the glory of Mother Russia. I think this is plausible. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I don't live in that part of the world. I don't trust Vladimir Putin. I don't trust almost any of the media in my own country reporting on him. But I think it is a plausible scenario, though I would hate it to be true, but I will buy because I think it's plausible.
I will sell whatever chance Russia and Putin have of coming out clean on the other side of this absolutely goes away if he pushes a nuke button for whatever reason.
Next, Jeffrey Myers has this. Top 5 deceased actors you would probably want to hang out with in real life. Number 5, Robert Mitchum.
Wow, that's kicking it old school.
Number 4, Charles Bronson.
Nice.
Number 3, Sean Connery.
Absolutely, Sean Connery.
Number 2, Steve McQueen. And number 1, John Wayne.
That's a pretty good list, man.
Just men's man.
Yeah, that's a pretty good list. I could go for that, as the great prophets Hall & Oates once sang. I'll buy that, yeah.
Another list of actors, Jason Dinsmore says, top 5 people that could have played Nefarious almost as good as Sean Patrick Flannery. Number 5, Bruce Willis.
Sell, no way.
Number 4, Denzel Washington.
I mean,
I'm just speechless right now.
I mean, Denzel is arguably the greatest actor of all time. So I think you have to buy that. He's certainly in the conversation.
Number 3, Matthew McConaughey.
The voice would have been different. But I could see McConaughey pull off kind of the thug / victim duality that Sean did. I could see McConaughey doing that. It would sound different. Hey guy, hey man. It would sound different. Okay, but I could see it. I'll buy.
Number 2, Todd Erzin.
What are we doing here?
Thank you, but no.
Come on, man. What was that?
And number 1, Mickey Rourke.
It's funny you would make that analogy because when I saw Sean perform this in real time on the set, the first thing that dawned on me was, dude, this is like a young Mickey Rourke watching this, And knowing Sean as well as I do, at least a little bit as well as I do, I think he would, with the random, frankly dumb insertion of you onto the list, I don't understand that at all. I thought we were having a serious conversation.
I bring a lot to the table.
Okay, but not that much. I think Sean would appreciate the fact that he's even being discussed in that company of the names other than Todd's that are on your list. So I'll buy it.
Next, we go to Tyler Bruder, top 10 films, leftist edition. Number 1, Good Will Hunting.
So these are films that we think leftists like?
Nope, just wait.
Oh, no.
Number 1.
He's changed
Good
the
Will
titles.
Hunting.
Okay, I see.
The God Person of Unknown Gender.
Oh.
Number 3, Saving Ryan's Privates. Number 4,
that actually might be a movie, if you know what I'm saying.
Number 4, Top or Bottom Gun.
No,
Number 5,
no.
Undocumented Immigrant Kane. No. Number 6, Drill Bill.
No.
Number 7, The Bisexual Man. Number 8,
the
Plus Size
Bicentennial Man.
Yeah. Number 8, Plus Size Albert. Number 9, Grinding Nemo. And number 10, He's a Girl by Friday.
Grinding Nemo, stop. Stop that. That is terrible. Stop it. That is dreadful. Nevertheless, it is also prophetic, so I will buy.
We are on a movie kick, actually, this week. Top 10. This is from
I'm
Nitwit.
glad somebody is, because if you look at the business the theaters are doing, we ain't on much of a movie kick there right now.
Let me just say, if offered a role, I will not participate in Grinding Nemo.
You're not on Grinding Nemo?
No.
What about Plus-Sized Albert?
I want my agents to know this.
I think I'd be willing to at least do a cameo in Plus-Sized Albert. Yes. Go ahead.
This is from Nitwit, top 10 dude movie quotes, and I just picked the top 4 here. Number 1, Fix Bayonets from Gettysburg.
Oh, man, that whole scene.
That's a great scene, but that's number 1 of all time? Of all time?
Well, it doesn't necessarily say it's...
Okay. Yeah, let's just do this as a Mount Rushmore, since there's only 4.
Okay.
Number 2, you've got to ask yourself one question: do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? From Dirty Harry.
That's yeah.
Number 3, Get Busy Living or Get Busy Dying from Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And number 4, Freedom from Braveheart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff. Very good stuff.
I don't have an instant objection to any of those. I'm sure we could come up with another Mount Rushmore that'd be just as great.
I know you could.
But that I don't have an objection
There's no
to any
point
of those.
quibbling,
Yeah.
All right, getting more serious for a couple of moments. Provo Sapien has this. Revival in mass won't happen until there's an economic bust. If we don't humble ourselves, a loving God will humble us.
Bye. That's the comfort principle, and there's nothing that we see that shows otherwise.
I will buy. I will agree. This goes back. You guys remember that ministry meeting I went to the 1st of May down in Dallas with some people from around the country, and where we just got together to have an honest conversation from a biblical worldview perspective on where the country is at and where it's heading, and just trying to, iron sharpening iron, wisdom in a multitude of counsel, just get together and try to discern, where the Spirit's going here. And one of the things that I wish I could remember who it was, but I don't. But it was one of the most profound things I heard that day. Is we're all talking so much about the need for revival, and this really hit close to home to me because I've been saying revival or bust on this show for years now, and he goes, and this person said, we're all talking about the need for revival, and of course we desperately need it, but do we truly understand what it is that we are asking? And we are not currently in the shape of sustaining something like that. And that most of the time through history, revivals do not happen, like they happened early in our history, in accordance with and complementary to the direction of the culture. Most of the time they happen in defiance of and perpendicular to the culture, meaning that the revival is anathema to the current spirit of the age, the current trajectory of that culture. And there will be attempts and history has shown even very violent ones to snuff those things out. So are we really, and this person was like, are we really sure we know that of which we are asking of God when we pray for revival? Because God may say, okay, but then we got to till the soil here. There's still too many weeds here. We got to prune some weeds. My people have too many weeds. So even amongst them, we've got to do some pruning within my own people. And that could very well be a painful process. And I just, I've always looked at it, frankly, in the context of great awakenings that didn't necessarily cause that level of existential defiance, where a Caesar would say, it's Kaiser Kyrios or Christos Kyrios, your call. Okay, so it's the funeral pyre, it's we burn you alive, or bow the knee to Caesar. You know, we didn't, in our Great Awakenings, that didn't go on here, you know? And so I've always viewed it in that frame because I'm also human. And so I tended to view it in the most comforting and delightful framing of the process. But that is rather unique and not typically how these kinds of things have gone down throughout the 2,000-year history of the church. And it really broke me thinking about that. And I think that this proposition, I think, speaks to that as well.
Yes.
Next, we go to that Matt guy who says this: Trump's first term gave us quote-unquote winning, but instead, or in the end, moved us much further towards the total state. Different tact, but the same overall result we got from the Bushes. Dobbs was our consolation prize. Ultimately, he said what we wanted but didn't deliver, like the rhinos before him.
Overall, in the broadest possible strokes, I don't think every single sentence you have in there connects in the way you think it does, but overall, in the broadest possible strokes, I will say bye, which is why what Governor DeSantis said on your montage is so salient. It is about this.
I think you can absolutely 100% and wholeheartedly buy this and still recognize that, at least in my lifetime, Donald Trump is by far the best president, certainly the best Republican president.
Well, yeah, which is why they reacted to him the way that they did. As Steve said, he did not have the worldview to deal with evil on that level. So like I said, the math doesn't all connect in the way it did, but the ultimate outcome, I don't know how you can argue with it.
Here's my hesitation. I agree that the election of Donald Trump pushed us further to the brink that the left always wanted to take us to. And I've pointed out before, I think two events happened in 2016 that made the system realize, oh bleep, this kind of slow boil thing we've been doing little by little, and you go find yourself your Barack Obamas, and and you humor the people, inspire them, while we just turn the dial up little by little. And sure, the people who are always going to get it and never be with us are going to scream and yell, but everybody else who's sheep, a plebe, just keep that at a nice simmer little by little, and there'll be the frog in the boiling water for us. And then all of a sudden the people turned around and did Brexit and Trump in the same year, and they were like, Carl Lewis singing the national anthem. All right, that maybe there was more discernment going on than maybe they accounted for. And so the code red was issued.
Yes.
All right, DEFCON 1, they went to DEFCON 1 and said, hit it. Now, we maybe don't have a 20-year plan to execute here, okay? We got to do this thing now. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I agree with something our colleague Daniel Horowitz has pointed out a lot, that Trump would message our most aggressive posture, which would then light them on fire, and then not follow through.
Exactly.
I agree with that too, okay? I agree with that too, because they're true. That's why I agree with both of them, because they're true. I'm struggling with the other end of this proposition, because one, and this is probably, again, we all have our generational biases. I'm a kid born into the abortion era. I survived my mother contemplating having me killed. And it was the formative culture war issue of this entire era, of two generations. And so I struggle with reducing winning that fight as a consolation prize. I think it's a lot more than that. Furthermore, I think from a foreign policy perspective, Trump demonstrated a very important point that we're not utilizing right now because of who's in charge. But the foreign policy, there will never, ever again be a forever war GOP nominee. Never will happen again. Ever. Never will happen again. Trump completely broke that paradigm. He showed there are deals to be made in the Middle East. He demonstrated this. He proved we don't have to sit here for another 30 years and come up with how much territory should the Israelis give away to pacify the Palestinians to get to some form of normalcy in the Middle East. He just bypassed the entire Palestinian question. And I think that has the potential to have long-lasting positive impacts. And so I think those are momentous accomplishments. I don't think that they are consolation prizes. While at the same time, the potential that was not reached, as illustrated in the first half of that statement, I agree with that sentiment. But
I think you're just actually making his case all the more.
All right, tell me why. Because I'm leaning towards selling. Okay.
You're adding in more. Like, I don't think he's by calling it a consolation prize, I didn't get the impression he's trying to diminish the importance of that. But the more important things you add on that he accomplished, and yet we still have the swamp, I think that's the point. Whatever he did that was good, in its totality, ultimately ended up where we are now, where, as you point out on a regular basis, and I think correctly, no one's learned any lessons from any of this. The more we go down, and he's still unelectable.
Donald Trump, despite everything that was against him, despite his own limiting principles of his own character, flaws.
One, by the way, have you seen what he's tweeting? Not tweeting, Truth Socialing today about reminding Black America that he's the only president who doesn't have, including Obama, who doesn't have slaveholder ancestry.
Well, that was an AP story yesterday, or Reuters or somebody. Didn't they have that story? But despite the limiting principles of his own character, his own hires, and the demonstrated limiting principle of what they tried to do to him as president from the day he took office. Really, remember the day after he won. Remember, we started seeing violence against his supporters, and they were claiming that Trump's a fascist. And we were making the point during the transition. Actually, historically, it's the people beating people for their political opinions that are the fascists, not the ones receiving the beating, right? Despite all those things, Donald Trump accomplished in 4 years 2 massive paradigm shifts. He smashed Roe versus Wade, and there will never, ever again be a forever war nominee of the Republican Party. I think that's more than a concession or a consolation prize.
You're being fair, but I also just don't even think you believe what you just said because of what you say on a regular basis. Yet, we are still coming up on the election that you, under your breath, have said multiple times is the most important election of our lifetime.
I think I might be willing to say that for the first time and not hate myself.
And if they were genuinely paradigm shifting, like that's not, it's just, I think.
Don't they prove, gosh, this is making me rethink some things, having this conversation. Don't they actually prove that what I'm saying is accurate by what they want to do to him?
No, that's not the point of the question, though. Is the deep state more entrenched and deeper than ever, ultimately?
I agree. Yes, I agree with that part wholeheartedly. And this is why this is my issue with him. And we saw this on March 16th, 2020, that eventually worldview is destiny. Just doing things reactionary or transactionally or instinctively, when you're up against a fully systemic theology, which is what he is. He's up against a fully systemic demonic theology that you're not going to, you can't beat that with instinct and reactionaryism, no matter how powerful or potent your persona is. Eventually, worldview is destiny. And his worldview, the minute that Fauci and Birx walked into his office and said, you're going to kill 2 million people if you don't shut the entire country down, his worldview collapsed at that point, and the country still hasn't recovered from that moment. So I think the tension that I am feeling in trying to answer this honestly is why there is so much division about this particular primary. Despite the polling margins that show, for whatever the polls are worth, Trump is way ahead. It's because there are 2 reasons you're not supporting Donald Trump for this nomination. one of them have already been shown to not matter. And that's the reason that you're supporting a Nikki Haley or some hack candidate like that. But then there's the reason that you're supporting DeSantis again. And Trump supporters know that that reason matters. Because they will cheer everything I just said until I got to March 16th, 2020. And then March, what is the rationale for a DeSantis candidacy without March 16th, 2020 and what happened the next 8 months after that? Zilch. You know why? Because Donald Trump is president of the United States right now.
Yeah.
If not for what happened on March 16th, 2020 and the events that unfolded therein. And likely Ron DeSantis is probably being knighted by Trump as this is my son in whom I am well pleased. Think about that.
Yes.
Think about everything going on right now. All of this, all of its origin, truly. All the tension and everything on the right goes to the fateful decision Trump made that day and the days thereafter, his final year in office. That created this now. Now we've got all these people that loved Ron DeSantis and now suddenly hate him everything is because of that moment.
This is why you should be buying.
But up until that moment, the guy did accomplish 2 paradigm shifts in a singular term.
But he concedes that point. It's not... You're adding more points. He only mentioned one. You can mention more. But at the end, Ron DeSantis' assessment, which I think you'll agree with just about every word in Aaron's montage of what, the draining versus breaking, it's basically, this is the same point. With all of that said, you're still parked here having to say that this is the most important election of your lifetime, which I know you hate to say because you realize that we are even deeper in the hole than we were before Trump. That's all this is saying.
I think that this is really a in the eye of the beholder question for a lot of people, even in our own audience. And so you make a compelling case for sure. And so since you bought, I will sell. But I think that this is, first of all, I think this is the kind of conversation that probably needs to be had more often on the right, as opposed to, DeSantis used AI improperly, and Trump went to full Cinco de Mayo taco bowl with black voters on Truth Social. That's the kind of stuff we tend to talk about. But I think the conversation we just had here the last 15 minutes is far more fruitful and eventful for the future of our movement in the country.
And none of it is necessarily an indictment of Donald Trump. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the reason we are here has far less to do with his personal mistakes than with what the swamp decided to do to him, which I think is a fair assessment. Then I still have to present to you as a Trump supporter, like, he's the only I can solve guy. Well, he didn't solve it then. Why is it going to be solved now? We're still here, no matter what you think of Donald Trump and how badly he got screwed. And I agree with a lot of that. The point of this is we're still here. That's reality.
Correct. And if you're on the Trump side, you will point to what I said, which is he broke 2 generational paradigms, 2 of them.
And then they broke him.
And so he can do that. And if you're on the DeSantis side, you're saying that.
Yeah.
And both sides have ample reasons for why they think that. And that's why everyone's dug at their heels, man. And friends are turning on each other right now.
But if you're
because I want you to validate my certainty.
But if you're a Donald Trump supporter, then you come back, well, they screwed us. I couldn't do anything. Then your reasons for Donald Trump supporting him are not consistent.
You're correct. And then they'll come back and say, they'll do the same thing to your boy DeSantis. And what has he proved that he could do up against the same Leviathan? And around and around and around we go. That's the issue. That what we just quantified right here, ironically, on probably one of the least MAGA simpatico shows on the right in terms of fluffer duty for Trump anyway. What we just demonstrated here in the last 15 minutes or so, we've had 10, 12 minutes, we've had this conversation, is the conundrum that has a lot of people of very good conscience blocking each other on Twitter and everything else right now, is because we're at a standstill over this very question.
Too much credit about being a very good conscience.
Okay.
Ready to move on?
I guess. We got a few minutes left.
The North Remember says Kari Lake would win a recall election against Hobbs if she petitioned for a recall of the Arizona governor.
Sell. This is one of the problems I have with Trump's electability. Once you have created a narrative that permits you to steal an election from somebody, I just don't know why you wouldn't do it again. I mean, Katie Hobbs is in total control now. They have a Democrat Secretary of State, and she's the governor. So I would sell.
I'll buy.
And I think, and I say this to someone that adored Carrie Lake as a candidate. If you love her, she is getting close to becoming. She needs to avoid the temptation. Let me be fair, really fair. Just like I have to constantly check myself because I just don't like Trump's personality on most days and on most levels. And I have to therefore constantly check myself that I'm looking at the issues critically so I don't let personal animus get in the way of objective analysis or seeing things for as they really are, like the conversation we just had. Fair? Okay. So let me call myself out first before I do this with someone as a candidate that I adored in Carrie Lake. She needs to be... and maybe I don't know her at all. So maybe this is what she's going for. I don't know. But if that's not what she's going for, and you want her to be a future brand in the Republican Party, be very careful that she doesn't become the Republican Stacey Abrams. Okay? Now, they're not the same situation. Stacey Abrams lost by over 50,000 votes and was aided and abetted by the media for years as the candidate, as the governor in absentia. Okay? But meaning that it's the fact that my message that I got screwed. She's not Trump. She doesn't have Trump's accomplishments. All right? And so the idea that my reason for being is not what I've done, but what I didn't do, I think that's a dangerous place for a movement to be. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. But your highest qualification is something you didn't do.
Going
not
forward,
what you actually did.
But in the past, like ever since the left did what it did to shank this election, and the Republicans who had tone arguments for not voting for her. Yep. You're getting owned right now. Yeah. You
that
have
said,
majorities.
Katie Hobbs, Todd is right. Katie Hobbs should be arrested.
Yes.
That being said, arrest Katie Hobbs.
I have to speak this one into existence because y'all are stupid over there, and you've earned what you've gotten for. On this, I mean, look at this. You have majorities over there. That ridiculous woman. And she is utterly ridiculous.
Talking about Katie Hobbs.
Yes, yeah, Katie Hobbs. Yeah. Look at what you've done. This is she's the groomer that's going after your kid. She's the exact same person, and you allowed this to happen in that state.
And they have the narrative. They'll just steal it. That's why I sold. They'll just steal it from her again and say, well, she hasn't made good with the McCain and flake factions, and the same people all those people live in Maricopa County and didn't turn out for her. Same result. Why wouldn't they just run the same operation they just ran on Election Day? They have that narrative. That's one of the dangers I think that exist with the nomination of Trump. They have a narrative now, concept proof that you can steal an election from him and the public will buy it. Daniel Horowitz is next. So last night, you guys know how warm-blooded I can be, particularly this time of year. And I've been bragging about the Miracle brand sheeps with the self-cooling properties, technology developed by NASA, the kind of stuff that the astronauts sleep in, to maintain cool temperatures and stuff. And this is normally the time of year, too, because we're upstairs, the, hottest part of the house. We might turn the fan on as well, just to help circulate the central air in the master bedroom. Guys, I got up to pee last night, which at my age happens every night. You feeling me, Todd?
There's already been a lot of sharing about nocturnal sleeping. Just do what you're going to do here. Let's move on.
By the way, for those of you,
and fans and
Todd and I go through this ritual every time Steve comes in every morning. Just do what you're going to do, man.
Last night I got up to pee because that's what 50-year-old men do in the middle of the night a lot. And man, I'm freezing.
What?
The Miracle brand sheets do such a good job of cooling me down. I did something we have lived in this home, all right, for now 17 years. And I've had the same ceiling fan all 17 years in the same bedroom. I did something last night I have not done in the previous 17 years of living in that home. I turned the fan off, the ceiling fan off, at night in the summertime because I was too cold. I mean, these sheets cool me down so well at night, I had to turn the fan off because I was too cold now. You know, I can't remember the last time I was too cold, except like in January or something, you know? So these sheets are absolutely outstanding. They are comfortable. They also are infused with a silver that helps to prevent about 99.7% of the bacterial growth out there, helping them to stay cleaner and fresher about 3 times longer than average store-bought sheets. If you want to try them, upgrade today with Miracle Made. Just go to trymiracle.com/Deace. Trymiracle.com/Deace. Use the code Deace to claim a free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Deace. Claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off at trymiracle.com/Deace. All right, let's bring in the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, our good friend Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you again, my friend. So I want to go right to it. I discussed what happened and what Breitbart attempted to do on behalf of the cultic wing of the Trump movement last night, which was practice even more than an excommunication. And frankly, Pedro Gonzalez is probably excommunicated himself by this point. But they tried an extermination. They basically said these racist / anti-Semitic ramblings that Pedro has exhibited in the past, they were totes cool, provided he was slurping Donald Trump. But now that he is effectively deconstructing him in the primary, we now have to police him. And I made the point, Daniel, that regardless of whatever you may think of what Pedro said, I don't know him that well. I've had a few conversations with him. He's been on our show a few times. But he was man enough to come to me last week to tell me that this was coming, and he really regretted the past comments that he made and the darkness that he kind of was getting ready to embrace. He came to me again yesterday to give me a heads up that the story was coming. To me, this is much bigger than what you think of Pedro Gonzalez and those comments. That we cannot establish a precedent, and I think a lot of our colleagues, to their credit, demonstrated this in reaction. Because I wasn't going to talk about this actually until I saw a lot of our colleagues talking about it. The precedent of we're now an identity politics cult like the left. So like Jason Whitlock, Clarence Thomas, Thomas Sowell, Delano Squires, they're not black anymore once they cease being Democrats. Dave Rubin's not gay anymore once he ceased being a Democrat. If now the new thing is you can be as terrible of a person as you want, provided you are slurping the right political power at the moment that lines my pocketbooks or advances my ambitions, then the minute you don't, suddenly we're going to prosecute those things. That is a precedent, Daniel, that just simply, regardless of what you think of Pedro Gonzalez individually, in my view, cannot stand, and we have to snuff that out on the right now before it ever gets rolling.
Well, Steve, this has already gotten rolling for a long time because it's the same thing with policy that, hey, look, anything is good so long as my cultish individual is supportive of it. So now it's just like, hey, I'll throw anyone off the ship if they're no longer in support of Trump. This is not new. What is unique a little bit is the way it was done. This is sort of like having Lindsey Graham suddenly get married, okay? And he gets married, he has kids, family, and then Rick Greenell and Bruce Jenner dig up some sort of
flirty text from the past
from Mar-a-Lago.
Yes,
it's like, yeah, we know you were doing that, but that proves the point. It's like this is the problem with where you are now. So they made it in this case very clear that this wasn't about Pedro because he's not that well known. It was all about DeSantis. That somehow DeSantis is anti-Semitic or full of anti-Semitic surrogates, even though I don't think Pedro or really anyone is being paid to support him online. They're just some people do, some people don't, just like with Trump, although I do suspect a lot of those Trump people are being paid and they're engaging in projection. So the Breitbart article made it about DeSantis right away. So I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'm sure Pedro was doing that then. That's the sewer he was swimming in, and he got out of it because of that purpose. He was like, wait a minute, I'm sick of this unbridled populism for populism's sake, hatred, nastiness for nastiness sake. I actually want to get somewhere. I got into this because I didn't believe, and he came to me a few months ago By the way, this has been around for months. They decided when they wanted to drop it. I've never seen such a self-indictment, because that means that the people who are dropping it, they're dropping it. Why? Because he left Trump and supports DeSantis. Well, then who was he saying this stuff around and sharing it back and forth? The people who leaked it. Who are they? Trump supporters that obviously think like that. And that's kind of the point. He left it. It's like, someone who leaves Jehovah's Witnesses and finds the truth. You could leak what they were saying back when they were with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think this is partly why Pedro is just so zealously obsessed with how Trump is a cancer on everything we want to accomplish, whereas you and I are we were always steady Eddie in our views, pretty much where we were. He's a lot younger. He was finding himself. So he was so upset by this. So there's nothing new about it. And I think, Steve, there's another important point aside from the point you made, which is very valid. And that is, there's a lot of young people like Pedro that I think are making this journey. And this is really important here. You see, what happens when you have a system that's completely corrupt, broken, everything they say is a lie, every major event that induces civilization change is built on a lie, everything is censorship, right? Everything is identity politics, as you mentioned, race-based. Whites are terrible. Whites are terrible. You can't say this. You can't question this. So what's going to happen is, and you see this in the polling, Generation Z, that young generation, 70-80% are brainwashed into that. But the people who aren't brainwashed, well, they don't have an affirmative belief system that they are seeing as to where to go. I know that's wrong, but where do I go? And this is the failure of Con Inc. So MAGA Inc. filled that void. But it's just a bunch of people dancing around with a fire hose, spraying it at each other, spraying it aimlessly, hating for the sake of hating. They'll pass around messages hating on Hispanics or blacks, and that's what's clear. But then at the same time, DeSantis is mean to blacks because he's tough on crime and won't win their vote, or, Trump is good for the First Step Act, but, then you'll catch them saying stuff about, about blacks. They believe in this reflexive reactionary politics of whites suck, okay, so then blacks suck, right? Rather than having an affirmative vision. And I think Pedro was going through this journey that, wait a minute, the Republican Party is a joke. Where do I go? They're not
sort of like the Groyper phenomenon. That's what you're describing, right?
And clearly, one of the things in there is that he seemed to, for a little bit of time, get roped into this Fuentes guy. And I understand it. It's like, question the Holocaust. We're told not to question it, so let's go question everything. And there's nothing inherently wrong with questioning things, but it's like you don't have any leadership. And this is where we are, and this is why. So I think MAGA Inc. is a cancer, but also, again, this is another wake-up call to our colleagues. If you don't want the Europeanization of American politics, namely, you have a communist left that controls everything, a fake right Tory party or Christian Democrats in Germany that's really a left-wing subversive controlled opposition, and then you have that and like quasi-neo-Nazi parties. That's kind of what you have left, just reactionary. Unless we build an affirmative vision that will confront the racialism, confront the open borders, confront all this garbage in the proper way, you're going to get this false polarization that I think, Pedro's a deep thinker. He's constantly a guy questing for the truth. He got mixed up with that, and he's upset about it, and he's kind of found his way. He's gotten kids. He's matured, gotten older. But it's not just, that's when I was young. It's literally, this is his jumping ship from that camp to more our way of thinking that comes along with it. Steve, what does that say about the people who haven't made the jump? And obviously, we're not referring to the 99% of even core Trump supporters that aren't anti-Semitic. They're not that. They just, genuinely see him as the only hope around. I'm talking about these people that are surrounding him, where it's either Lindsay or Laura Loomer, okay? It's either the Groypers or it's the establishment. You don't have sane people with any semblance of forward-looking, effective values with a plan of how to implement it. And I think that's what he moved away from. But it doesn't surprise any of us that he dabbled in that.
In a way, aren't we just destined without God, which is what separated our revolution and uprising against from every other in the history of our species? Without God, isn't this what it always looks like?
Bingo.
The insurrection
Bingo.
is it's storm the Bastille. Here comes the reign of terror. It's Mao and his little red book, and here come the purges. This is what in our own flesh. This is always what insurrections and revolutions become without God, right? I mean, that's the story of human history. That's why we haven't hit 250 yet for a birthday. We're the longest concurrent experiment in human freedom. Okay, think about that. At least 7,000 years of recorded human history, and 247 years is the longest streak that anybody's ever had in that entire arc of sustained human freedom and self-government. Because in our flesh, we become exactly what you just described. It's just a matter of what brand we put on it, what uniform we put on it, and what language we speak it in.
It's reactionary politics. Yeah. It's the fact that, and again, it's emblematic of conning and populism.
What do we mean by reactionary? Let's define that quickly. Meaning that if I am being convinced that one side is bad, then the opposite must therefore be good, no matter what darkness I have to accept in order to buy that premise.
My views on any given issue any day are defined by a ricochet from what the Dems and the media are saying, or in some cases, Conservative Inc. is saying or doing, well, I'm going to be fierce and name call and fight. But there's no guiding principle of what it is you're trying to accomplish. This is European politics. This is why, the European right largely is as secular as the left. They appreciate the Christian heritage in a very symbolic way of Europe, but they don't live it in their hearts and souls and actions. And that's why you have the creeping anti-Semitism on the right, just like the left there. And you notice during COVID, there was no real right pushback. It was kind of bipartisan in COVID authoritarianism because they didn't believe in self-evident truths, faith in God. They joined in the panic. It was uniquely a movement, I think, in this country, a little bit in some other places. This is where we're headed. What sort of people do you want to draw to your movement to fight the left who are 18, 20 years old now? That's Pedro a few years ago. He made the switch. But if nobody on either side offers something affirmative, this is the false dichotomy you're going to get.
Great stuff, my friend. Always good to see you. And we'll talk to you next week. Have a happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. All right?
Happy 4th. Take care.
Thank you. Your thoughts on that conversation, gentlemen, with Daniel. And Aaron, I'll go to you first this time.
No, that's a kind of a perfect way to end that entire conversation, is that without any mooring to absolute truth, to God, capital G God, this will always end up with something chaotic, something the opposite of good, true, and beautiful. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. That is the human condition. So basically what we're saying is this story is a microcosm of what we've been saying for years on this show. Revival or bust. Revival or bust. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Be careful about revival, but that's the only way through this. Because regardless of whether it's the parting on the left or the parting on the right, this is going to continue to circle the drain without God.
I think the irony of this is that Trumpers doing this to him, you used the exact opposite logic and the correct one to give Trump a chance when he won and beat the guy, and in a frustrating and embarrassing fashion that you were supporting and working for. Said, I don't hate my country. I have my differences with the man. I'm going to hope for the best. See, that no one will willing to hope for the best. This is the importance of Daniel saying an affirmative. No one's willing to hope for the best with a guy like Pedro. Same conversation. How about we just had this week about RFK Jr.
Because the best is defined by, do you affirm my idolatry?
Right. No.
And no matter what caliber of person you are or character you demonstrate, if you don't affirm my idolatry, then you're not a good person. That's a cult.
See, that's what you don't really, no matter how Trumpian you are, that means the best part of you that you aspire to through Trump can't possibly happen. You're going to choke the life
you're the
out of
limiting
it
principle.
Because you won't let anybody go in your direction.
Correct. You won't hold him accountable. You won't push him. You won't inspire him. You won't let anybody else join. You're an idolater. You become your own limiting principle. You enable the worst out of your own very idol.
This is what I was trying to say.
Because anything he does is the best, even when it is his worst.
This is what I was trying to say last week with specifically the cult aspect of Donald Trump. He deserves better supporters than you.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. Great place to end it. All right, we're going to stick around and do overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, John 3:17.